So this is another episode of my Director of Football series. If you want the context of all the players I would sign, I will leave the playlist in the description, but in this video I'll be answering the questions: what is Mason Mount's best role? Why would I consider Mount a Swiss Army knife? Why this unique system could be perfect for Mount? Why he should also learn to play as a fullback? And which ex-England legend does Mason Mount remind me of? Well, I'll tell you that one straight away. It's David Beckham, and you can find all of Beckham's retro Manchester United and England jerseys over on Jersey FIFA, as well as a vast collection from other clubs as well, from Manchester United, Barcelona and AC Milan. If you use code Atlantis at checkout, you'll get a discount. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which will be linked in the description. So to be honest, Mason Mount's best role is not definitive. It depends a lot on the system he's in and the players around him, and that's because unlike Bruno Fernandes, James Maddison or even Florian Wirtz, Mount doesn't have the consistent level of creative output in the final third to warrant building the whole attack around him. He's much better being the cog in a well-oiled machine rather than the focal point of the system. I'd compare him to someone like James Milner, even though I do think in terms of quality he is a level above, or maybe someone like David Beckham, with all three being hard-working, technically gifted wide midfielders who could be trusted to perform practically any role they were given. Now, you may not see a lot of 10 out of 10 performances from Mount, but I think in the right role, in the right system, he's a consistent 7 or 8 out of 10, which is the type of player every title winning squad needs. Think back to the likes of Darren Fletcher or Ji-Sung Park, players who in this era may have been criticised for their lack of creative spark or aesthetic on the ball, but two players who were incredibly effective in the roles they played and were crucial to United's dominance domestically and in Europe from 2007 to 2009. So what is Mason Mount's best role? Well, like a Swiss Army knife, it comes from his usefulness and adaptability. In short, Mount's best role is whatever the system needs at that point. He could play in a three-man midfield ahead of a single pivot alongside Bruno Fernandes, pushing up between the lines into the right-sided half space, with Dalot from fullback inverting alongside the single pivot to create a box shape in midfield, therefore providing the necessary defensive cover behind the two advanced central midfielders. In this role, Mount's offensive output is what he'll be judged on most, creating in the final third by holding the position in the right-sided half space, from where he can look to receive the ball between the lines in the middle third or roam over to the right side in the final third, looking to provide those underlapping runs between the fullback and centre-back, getting into crossing positions where he can either flash the ball across the box or cut it back to the edge. Or he could look to hold a deeper position on the flank, and like Kevin De Bruyne is known for on the right, backing up play and waiting for a pass backwards so he can then curl in a right-footed cross between the goalkeeper and defensive line. In that advanced midfield position, Mount is also in the optimal area to be a significant counter-pressing threat, having the energy and work rate alongside Bruno Fernandes to swarm the opposition's deeper line midfielders, trying to win the ball back high up the pitch in dangerous central positions. And of course, in this advanced central position, Mount's goal scoring is going to be a necessary trait. Arriving late into the box in Lampard-esque fashion, Mount showed in the 21-22 season for Chelsea that he can pick up double figures not just in assists but also in goals as well. Playing in a midfield three alongside Bruno Fernandes and my pick for the single pivot Boubacar Kamara, Mount should also be given the responsibility of dropping deep into a double pivot during certain phases of play. Whilst he would need to work on his press resistance, I do think he has a technical ability and also the athleticism to excel when receiving the ball with his back to goal, and although it may be premature, I do think later on in his career Mount could develop into more of a deeper lying central midfielder. However, the role I'm most excited about seeing Mount play is as a wide midfielder in a midfield diamond. Kamara at the base, Mount to the right, Mainu to the left, and either Wirtz or Bruno Fernandes topping the diamond, with Frimpong or Dalot at right back and Shaw or Malacia at left back. To me, seems like a perfectly balanced midfield with the fullbacks who can also provide the width in the system when needed. Mount suits this role to a T, with Frimpong overlapping down the right. Mount is going to have a lot more defensive responsibility than he would in a midfield three. Rather than pushing up between the lines and holding a more advanced position in the attack, expect Mount to be floating in front of and in behind the opposition's midfield line, depending on the position of the fullback behind him. But when Frimpong does overlap from fullback, he will need to drop and cover that right-sided channel, and whilst it may take away from his goal-scoring output, playing in this deeper position in what essentially is a three with Kamara and Mainu in front of the two centre-backs, Mount can utilise his long passing and deep crossing ability a lot more. We've seen how potent Trent Alexander-Arnold can be from this sort of quarterback-like position, and whilst Mount doesn't have this sort of world-class passing ability just yet, he can certainly be a very dangerous creator from these positions. Having Mount backing up the play with Frimpong providing overlapping runs, and someone like Greenwood ahead looking to drift in field, gives United a perfectly balanced right side with a variety of different ways to create. Now whilst it may sound absurd, I think Mason Mount should learn to play as a fullback. Not because I would be using him there that often, as Dalot, Frimpong and Simakan are far better options, but because if he can learn the defensive side of the fullback game, defending in 1v1s in the channel and being positionally solid at the back post alongside the right-sided centre-back, this will allow United a much greater fluidity in possession. If Dalot or Frimpong are to push further up the pitch, I would be looking for Mount to drop from midfield in order to cover that area at times, so that if the opposition do manage to turn over possession and counter quickly down the right, the high offensive position of the right back won't be as much of an issue if Mount can hold down that right channel during certain phases of play. As I also said in episode 1 of this series, in regards to Antonio Conte using a 5 at the back system, which will be linked in the description, Mount in my eyes could be used as a right wing back on occasion. Now in a conventional wing back role where both wing backs act almost as wingers in possession, providing the width and ball progression down the flanks, you'd certainly say that Mount lacks the pace and the dribbling ability required, making Frimpong a far better option here. Usually the wing backs provide the width whilst the two wide attackers ahead in the front three drift infield into the half space. However, you don't always have to use a wing back like this. While someone like Luke Shaw, or preferably Alvaro Fernandez if he isn't sold in the summer, on the left could play as a conventional wing back overlapping the player ahead, allowing the left sided attacker, my pick would be Wirtz, shifting in field. Mount on the other side could do the opposite. The right sided attacker ahead, Greenwood, Garnacho or Ahmad, whoever it is, could be the one to provide the width in the system, drifting over to the outside of the fullback. When the ball gets shifted over to United's right side, both the right sided attacker could essentially positionally pin the left back and the left sided centre back on that side, with one of the double pivot also doing the same in the deeper central midfield area, with all of these acting as a way to open up the half space. And this is where Mount's unorthodox wing-back movement comes into play. The opposition's left-sided midfielder is usually going to be focused on pressing the wing-back on his outside, near the flank, and so he's going to look to block off the pass out to Mount from Dalot with the ball in this example, and he's not going to be expecting Mount to make a movement infield from this position. Combine this with the fact that most wingers or wide midfielders aren't exactly the most positionally aware, and you have the perfect setup to allow Mount to hold a wide position, wait for the ball to get shifted over to the right, before then making a darting run off the back of the opposition's left-sided midfielder into the half space to then receive a threaded ball between the lines. And so rather than receiving the ball out wide as an orthodox wing-back like Jeremy Frimpong would, Mount instead would be receiving the ball in a central position between the lines. Opposition sides are accustomed to the winger drifting in field, the central midfielder pushing up, or the centre forward dropping off to receive the ball in these sorts of positions between the lines, but they aren't going to be as familiar with the wing back or full back doing this, and it's exactly this sort of outside of the box thinking that under the right coaching I think could get the best out of Mason Mount. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that video, check out some of the other episodes in this series. I'll leave the whole playlist linked in the description. You can also sign up to my Patreon where I have got a scout report series going. I've done Arthur Vermeeren and some others as well, so check that out, it will be linked below.